In this lesson, we're going to break down real covenants and equitable servitudes. So step one, right, what is a covenant? Well, from this point forward through the rest of the lecture, right, every time you hear me use the word covenant, you can in your head just think a promise, right? A covenant is simply a promise. Whether we're dealing with express covenants, implied covenants, we're in contract law, we're in real property. For the most part, when we're talking about covenants, we're talking about promises, right? And we all know what real property is, right? Real property is essentially just land. So if we combine the two, right, a real covenant is just a promise concerning the use of land, right? Not that bad, but if we look at our official definition, we'll say that a real covenant is a promise concerning the use of land that benefits and burdens the original parties to the promise and also their successors, right? And this part about successors is kind of the key, right? A real covenant not only benefits and burdens the original parties, right, but it also passes to their successors, right? And that's really what the focus of this lesson is going to be on. How do we determine whether a real covenant or an equitable servitude runs with the land to successors, right? But from the top, we can distinguish between real covenants and equitable servitudes, because you might hear me use those interchangeably. What's going on here is that real covenants are enforceable for monetary damages, and equitable servitudes are enforceable in actions for equitable relief, usually an injunction. So we'll see step one in our analysis is always, what is the plaintiff seeking here? Is the plaintiff seeking money damages or equitable relief? If the plaintiff is seeking monetary damages, we know it's a real covenant analysis. If the plaintiff is seeking equitable relief, like an injunction, we know it's equitable servitudes. The good news is, big picture, the analysis stays the same, right? We just change what elements we're actually applying, right? But real covenant, equitable servitude are both just a promise concerning the use of land that benefits and burdens the original parties to the promise and also their successors. The only difference is what remedy the plaintiff is seeking. If the plaintiff is seeking money damages, we know it's real covenants. If the plaintiff is seeking equitable relief, like an injunction, right, we know it's equitable servitudes. Right, but the rest is going to stay the same. Don't get tripped up by that. Right, but kind of the next thing then we have to identify is, okay, what are we talking about here with benefits and burdens? What is that, right? The benefit of the covenant or the benefit of the promise is the ability to enforce the covenant, while the burden of the covenant is being subject to or bound by it, right? So probably the best way to see what this kind of looks like is just to look at a classic fact pattern, right? We can look at an example, and as we go through the example, we can kind of define all of these terms a little bit more. Right, so imagine that A conveys Greenacre to B pursuant to a deed that states the following. B, his successors, heirs, and assigns shall not construct any structure on Greenacre that exceeds 15 feet in height. After the A to B deed is recorded, B conveys Greenacre to C. Of course, now C builds a 20-foot house on Greenacre, which would be a direct violation of this promise that B made to A, right? The question will ultimately be, can A recover damages or seek an injunction from C for breach of the covenant? But let's start with the basics, right? What is the covenant that's involved here, right? Remember, the covenant is just a promise. Who is our promisor? Who is making the promise? Well, here, B, right, is promising to A, look, I'm going to buy Greenacre, and I'm promising, right, by this covenant, right? B, his successors, heirs, and assigns shall not construct any structure on Greenacre that exceeds 15 feet in height. So essentially the promise, the covenant, is just from B to A. B is promising A, hey look, I'm not going to build anything that exceeds 15 feet on Greenacre. Okay, that's easy enough. Who has the benefit of that promise and who has the burden of that promise? Well, the benefit of the covenant is the ability to enforce the covenant. So here, who gets to enforce this promise, A or B? Well, A gets to enforce the promise, right? B is the one who is subject to it or bound by it. B is the one who has to actually refrain from building anything over 15 feet on Greenacre. If B builds something over 15 feet on Greenacre, A is the one who gets to enforce that. A can sue, right? A can say, hey, look, we had a promise. You told me you weren't going to build anything over 15 feet. Now you're building something over 15 feet. I can enforce that promise in court, right? Seek monetary damages or maybe an injunction. But either way, A has the benefit of the covenant because he's the one who gets to enforce it. Of course, B would then have the burden of the covenant because he is subject to it or bound by it, right? He has to refrain from building anything over 15 feet, right? B is the one that is subject to it or bound by it. Okay, with those two pieces of information, we can do a lot, right? We're going to see step 1 and step 2 of the analysis. But let's move past, right? We know that this isn't just A and B. We have this third party C involved. So how does C come into play here? Right, well remember, A conveys Greenacre to B pursuant to a deed where we lay out this promise, right? Where this covenant is contained, right? That agreement is between A and B. Those are our original promisee and original promisor, right? B is the one who is making this promise to A. B is the one who's saying, hey, look, A, I am not going to build anything over 15 feet on your property, right? Okay, but then what happens? B transfers the property to C, right? B conveys Greenacre to C. C did not make any express promise to A, right? C wasn't the one who entered into the original agreement with A, right? B was the one who said, I promise not to build anything over 15 feet. But what happens? B conveys Greenacre to C, and now C is the one who violates or breaches this promise, right? And the question is ultimately, can A recover from C? And so what our question is going to be in a real covenant and equitable servitude analysis is whether this burden that B had, right, this burden that B had to not build anything over 15 feet on Greenacre, can that burden run with the land to C such that A can enforce the contract, or can enforce, the covenant against C, right, and recover either monetary damages or equitable relief, right? That's going to be the question. Can A recover from C? And in order to make this determination, we'll have to run through elements, right? And we have 6 elements up here on the board. And the question is, what elements are we applying, right? And to determine what elements we're applying, we have to go through 2 steps. Step number 1, are we dealing with money damages or equitable relief? What is the plaintiff seeking? What remedy is the plaintiff seeking? If the plaintiff is seeking compensatory damages, monetary damages, right? The plaintiff wants $150,000, right? That's money damages. So we start in this column on the chart, right? We'll come right here, and we know we're right here, right? Because the plaintiff is seeking money damages. So we can just ignore this. We come to here on the chart and we look at, okay, money damages. The next question is, which is running, the benefit or the burden? Right, well, we already said, right, B holds the burden, right? B is the one who is subject to or bound by this promise, right? He's the one that actually has to refrain from building something, over 15 feet on Greenacre. The question is whether that burden runs from B with the land to C. Right, so here we're asking, does the burden run? Right, so plaintiff is seeking money damages, and we're asking whether the burden runs, not the benefit. So that takes us to this column, which means 6 elements have to be satisfied in order for that burden to run with the land from B to C. Right, we'll see we have a writing requirement, an intent requirement, this idea of touch and concern. We have some privity requirements and notice. All 6 of those are going to have to be satisfied in order for the burden of that covenant to run with the land from B to C. In order for A to recover from C, right, all 6 of these elements will have to be satisfied. Right, so if A was seeking equitable relief, right? Say A wanted an injunction, right? A is not seeking money, A wants an injunction. Say C has just started construction on this 20-foot house, and A wants to shut it down immediately. So A files for an injunction. Well, what elements would we need to satisfy there? we can immediately go to this column, right? Equitable relief. And we see it's actually pretty much the same requirements, whether it's burden or benefit. Equitable servitudes is pretty straightforward. So we'll see there's 4 elements. In order for that burden to run from B to C, we'll see that there's 4 elements: the writing requirement, the intent requirement, the touch and concern requirement, and the notice requirement. If those 4 elements are met, right, then we would say that the burden of that covenant runs with the land from B to C. The only difference is what remedy the plaintiff is seeking. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about the benefit. What would that look like where we get into these benefit columns? We'll say that A is trying to recover money damages. Well, actually, right, it wouldn't be A. So say that same exact fact pattern, but A actually transfers his interest too. A conveys Greenacre to D, right? Imagine that we have a D down here, right? So A conveys his property to D, and B conveys Greenacre to C. So B conveys Greenacre to C, A conveys his property to D. The question is, can D sue C? Well, here we'd have to do both, right? The burden analysis would stay the same, whether the burden runs with the land from B to C in order for A to recover from C, that stays the same. Money damages, burden, we're applying those 6 elements. But from A to D, now that's a different question. We're asking, does the ability to enforce the promise run with the land from A to D, right? If D is seeking monetary damages, right, and we're asking whether the benefit runs, then we'd apply these 4 elements, right? The writing requirement, the intent requirement, the touch and concern element, and relaxed vertical privity, right? So that would be if A, our original promisee, conveyed his property to D, and now D is trying to sue C. The question is whether the benefit runs with the land from A to D, right? And in that case, we'd have to do both. To get to a conclusion, we'd have to see whether the benefit runs from A to D and whether the burden runs from B to C in order for D to enforce the covenant against C, right? Hopefully that makes sense, right? But that's how we get to the elements, right? So next we have to break down and understand each of these elements, right? Thank you so much for watching this video preview of our Legal Education Accelerator Program, or LEAP for short. If you would like to see the conclusion of this video and gain full access to our entire 1L and 2L video library, integrated outlines, streamable audio versions, additional practice exams with explanations, and much more, we invite you to head over to our website and join the thousands of law students who have already enrolled. To get started with your no-risk free trial today, simply click the link in the description box below or visit www.studicata.com/leap.
Hi everyone, my name is Serena and I'm currently a law student at South Texas College of Law, Houston.
Hi everybody, my name is Shiva and I'm currently a law student at Southwestern.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I am a first year student at South Texas College of Law, Houston. I used the Studicata study video series last semester to help me prepare mostly for contracts, and I actually made an A+ in contracts last semester, which I greatly dedicate to the Studicata videos.
By using Studicata to help me prepare for my final exam, I was able to score the highest grade out of my class on the final and even have my essay distributed as the model answer. Not to mention I had done quite poorly on the midterm and was struggling throughout the whole course of the semester, understanding the material and keeping up with lectures.
Because of the Studicata video lectures, I was able to go into my exams with a feeling of confidence. I didn't have to worry about what the rules of law were or how I was going to organize my answer to an essay question.
I would absolutely recommend the Studicata series and their online course materials to anyone. I think that they are not like professor lectures that you might find online or other outside study materials that you may encounter. I think that the Studicata videos really focus on not only ensuring that you understand the material that you're going to encounter on your final, but they also help you to understand kind of the best method for test taking, and they really break down how to approach each problem and the best ways to tackle certain methods on testing, and I think that's really important, and I think it's really special. I don't see that anywhere else in any of the other online resources that I've found. So I would certainly recommend Studicata to anyone who is studying in law school right now. Good luck on your studying, and you're going to do great.
I would definitely recommend Studicata to anybody watching this video. Give it a chance. I'm positive that you will love it, that you will get a lot out of it, and that you will be happy that you gave it a chance. I definitely am. I know I will be using Studicata in the future.
And I cannot thank Studicata enough for getting me through my first semester of law school. I will definitely continue to watch the Studicata video lectures throughout my law school career, and I highly recommend that any future or current law student do the same.